Over the last 2 or so months, the diva of Dump Divas Kat Engelbert, along with players in the WNBA who are desperately fighting for money they haven't earned, they have been congregating every Sunday morning at Woke United Methodist like they usually do. But instead of praying to their unrisen King George Floyd and demanding their usual prayer request, chartered flights, an increased supply of Just for Men, complimentary batteries for recently donated dildos, directions for the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow so they can collect $1 million salaries. Instead of their usual request, the WNBA and its players, they have been asking Father George to heal the Great White Hope, Caitlin Clark.
The WNBA is sweating bullets. Ratings are tanking, ticket sales are flat, and suddenly the league that claimed it was more than one player is now begging Caitlin Clark to limp back onto the court.
Hey, George, it's me, Kathy E! We're in deep shit. The networks are expecting big ratings for the playoffs, and there is absolutely no way these unknown players who think they are stars can deliver. I really need a miracle, Father. Can you please heal the injuries that Caitlin Clark is dealing with?
This was supposed to be the year the WNBA proved it was more than just one player. They'd spent so much time trying to convince everyone that the league's success didn't hinge on Caitlin Clark. We're about the collective, they said. It's not just about one star, they preached. But fast forward to today, and the WNBA's entire future seems to rest on the shoulders of one player. And guess who that is? Caitlin Clark. Raw and funny how the narrative flipped so quickly, right?
Season. There is absolutely no reason for Caitlin Clark to return. But according to Stephanie White, the head coach of the Indiana Felines, not only is she hoping that Caitlin Clark returns for the playoffs, Steph wants to see the Roo from Waterloo back on the court in the regular season. The question is why?
A year ago, the league was practically shouting from the rooftops that it wasn't about Caitlin. They wanted to promote every player, create a sense of balance, and show that one player couldn't define the league. Yet now that the ratings are tanking and ticket sales are in freefall, what's the WNBA doing? Begging Caitlin Clark to come back. This is the exact same league that practically threw shade at her just a few months ago, hoping everyone would forget that, without Caitlin, the WNBA barely registers on the radar. But now, the truth is out in the open. Caitlin Clark is the WNBA. The league might want you to think otherwise, but deep down, they know she's their lifeline. Ron Rettel. The WNBA's entire marketing strategy in the lead-up to this season was built on one huge idea. They were more than just one player. The message was loud and clear. It's not just Caitlin Clark, it's about the collective, they said.
Return to practice. Hell, at this point, I don't even know if she's on the Huffy. Well, KC, don't you mean the treadmill? The WNBA can't afford a treadmill. When players are rehabbing injuries or looking to warm up, the WNBA provides them with a used Huffy or sometimes a Schwinn. But either way, with 10 or so days left in the regular season, Caitlin Clark is nowhere near ready to return. But according to Stephanie White, we could see the Roo from Waterloo on the court soon.
Every media outlet, every player, and every league official hammered home the idea that the WNBA was not a one-player show. But then what happened when Caitlin Clark went down with injury? The house of cards came crashing down. Suddenly, the league was scrambling. With Clark sidelined, the ratings plummeted, ticket sales dropped, and all the hype that had been surrounding the season started to fade into oblivion. Without her, there's no star power to keep the machine running. That's the brutal truth the WNBA is facing now. They spent so much time trying to prove they didn't need her. And now, ironically, they're literally begging her to save them.
Like I have been telling you guys since July, there is no way Caitlin Clark should return this season. The Indiana Felines are well on their way to being a flaming ass fire. They are barely clinging to the final spot in the playoffs. Sophie Cunningham's out for the season, which means Caitlin Clark would be on the court unprotected. She wouldn't have her bodyguard to protect her from opposing players who like to get physical.
Remember when the league touted its collective message as some sort of shining example of progress in women's sports? Well, now that their supposed collective can't draw attention, they're forced to admit the truth. Caitlin Clark was the league's biggest asset, and without her, the entire operation falls apart. It's one of those moments where you can see everything crashing in real time. When Caitlin Clark was on the court, the WNBA wasn't just relevant, it was buzzing. Suddenly, people were paying attention. ESPN was running highlight reels of her deep threes, casual fans were tuning in, and people were filling up arenas just to see her play. But the moment Clark was sidelined, the buzz disappeared. And I'm not talking about a slight dip here, I'm talking about a full-on crash. The Fever Games, which were pulling record-breaking numbers and drawing in casual viewers, suddenly became an afterthought. The national TV attention? Gone. The social media engagement? Dead in the water. Without Caitlin Clark, the WNBA turned into a ghost town. ESPN, which had been using her name to boost its coverage, found itself scrambling to find other stories. They started pushing players like Angel Reese in new outfits, and Sabrina Ionescu doing more three-point contests, all in an attempt to keep the conversation alive. But here's the thing, those players aren't Caitlin Clark. They don't draw the same attention, and they sure as hell don't create the same kind of excitement. On the surface, the WNBA is playing it cool. Cathy Engelbert, the commissioner of the league, is doing her best to appear calm and collected, but anyone with half a brain knows what's really going on behind the scenes. The WNBA is panicking. Networks like ESPN, ABC, and the streaming services that signed multi-million-dollar deals with the league are suddenly finding themselves in trouble. Why? Because they didn't sign those deals based on a collective of players. They signed them because of Caitlin Clark. Clark is the reason the league had the visibility it did. She's the reason ESPN had something to talk about during their broadcasts. She's the reason brands and advertisers were excited to get involved with women's basketball in the first place. But without her, those deals are going to fall apart. You can bet that networks like ESPN and ABC are already sending out some very nervous calls to the WNBA brass. They want answers, and the answers they're getting aren't good. As much as Engelbert tries to downplay it, there's a cold, hard truth here. The WNBA has pinned its survival on one player, and now they're in a scramble to get her back on the court, regardless of the long-term impact on her health. Here's where it gets interesting. At the end of the day, this is about money. Plain and simple. The WNBA is in a financial crisis, ratings are falling, ticket sales are dropping, and the buzz has all but evaporated. The league's future isn't just about attracting new fans or growing the sport, it's about keeping the lights on. And right now, the only thing that's keeping the WNBA alive is Caitlin Clark. When she was healthy, Fever Games were pulling in record numbers, with ticket sales skyrocketing and TV ratings doing better than some major professional leagues. It wasn't just about basketball, it was about the energy she brought. Caitlin Clark was the product. She was the draw. But now that she's been out for weeks, the numbers have plummeted. Teams that once saw a bump in ticket sales when Clark visited are now struggling to sell out their arenas. TV ratings are down, jersey sales are flat. The WNBA's dream of being recognized as a legitimate league is falling apart. The WNBA doesn't have the luxury of playing the long game. If they don't get Clark back on the court, and soon they risk losing their sponsors, their visibility, and their future. It's a bitter pill to swallow, but it's the truth. Without Caitlin Clark, the WNBA's best players are mostly irrelevant to casual fans. That's not to take away from their talent, but the reality is, the average sports fan isn't paying attention to Aja Wilson's post-game quotes or Sabrina Ionescu's practice threes. They'll tune in when Clark is playing, but without her, they don't care. Let's be real. Some of these players who were once critical of Clark's dominance in the media are now desperately hoping she returns. They know it, I know it, everyone knows it. When Caitlin Clark plays, the league gets more attention. When Caitlin Clark plays, their paychecks get a little bigger. When Caitlin Clark plays, people actually care about the WNBA. But without her, the league is back to square one. It's back to being just another sports league that can't break through the noise. And that's a hard pill for these players to swallow. Talk about irony. The WNBA has been riding Caitlin Clark's coattails since day one. She was the player they marketed the hardest, the player they plastered across every advertisement, and the player they leaned on to make people care about women's basketball. And now that she's hurt, suddenly the collective they tried so hard to promote looks a lot less appealing. Without Clark, the WNBA is just another forgotten sports league. They had a chance to build something great, to prove they could be more than just one player, but they never actually did the work. Instead, they rested on Clark's star power, and now that power is fading. And here's the real question. Should Caitlin Clark even come back? If she decided tomorrow that she was done with the WNBA, whether it was for her health, for personal reasons, or simply because she realizes the league needs her more than she needs them, what would happen? The cold hard truth is that if Clark walked away, the WNBA would collapse. They're relying on her. They've made her the face of the league, and without her, they're in serious trouble. And that's why the desperation behind closed doors is so palpable. It's not about competitive balance or team success, it's about survival. But Clark doesn't owe them a thing. She doesn't owe the WNBA, she doesn't owe the fans, and she certainly doesn't owe the players who tried to tear her down while they were building their own careers off of her name. So here we are. The WNBA is in full panic mode, and Caitlin Clark is sitting at the center of it all. Should she risk it? Should she return to a league that's depended on her to survive? Or should she sit out, let the league deal with the mess they've created, and focus on her future? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Smash that like button if you think Caitlin Clark is too valuable to risk it, and hit subscribe so you don't miss the next breakdown. See you in the next one.